That morning, Lara couldn't take it anymore. Her stomach growled louder than her thoughts. She had sat on the cold floor all night, watching the tiny window as darkness faded into morning. Her husband, Adisa, had whispered gently, "We'll figure things out, my love. We always do." But Lara knew he couldn't see the empty pots. He couldn't see how thin she'd become, how her dress hung loose on her once full frame. Blindness had taken his sight, not his hope. But Lara's hope had dried up like the last grain of Gary in their kitchen. With shaky hands, she wrapped a faded scarf around her head and stepped out. The village path felt longer than ever. Every step carried the weight of shame she'd buried for months. Heads turned, eyes whispered. Some pitied, most smirked. The girl who married a blind man, out of desperation, out of force. Now look at her, barefoot and broken. As she reached the compound gate, laughter spilled from inside. Siwa's laughter, sharp, sweet, and smug. Lara paused. Her heart thudded. But hunger doesn't wait. She knocked. Silence fell like a slap. The door opened and there stood Abik, her mother, in name only. Her face was rounder now, glowing with good food and good sleep. Gold bangles jangled on her wrist as she looked at Lara with no warmth at all. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone flat. Lara's voice trembled. I haven't eaten. I just need something. Anything." Abik's eyes narrowed. "So, your blind husband can't feed you? That's the life you chose, Lara. You were given a home, a husband. You spat on our kindness. Now you come crawling back?" Sewa appeared behind her mother, arms folded, lips curved in a cruel smirk. "She looks like she's been sleeping on the street." Lara looked down, her hands trembling. "Mama, please," Abik sneered. "You want food?" She turned around, picked up a greasy bowl of leftover soup from the floor. "Here, beggars can't be choosers." Before Lara could step back, Abik flung the soup. The cold, sticky mess splattered across her face and soaked her dress. Her eyes stung. Her mouth quivered. Sewa laughed. "Well, at least now she smells like she belongs in the gutter." Lara stood there, dripping and silent, not because she had nothing to say, but because shame had taken her voice too. Lara didn't speak. Her eyes, wide and glassy, blinked slowly as the cold soup slid down her cheeks and dripped from her chin. It clung to her dress, thick and sour, soaking the faded fabric that was already worn from too many washings and too little care. Her hands stayed at her sides. She didn't wipe her face. She didn't defend herself. Abik turned and walked back inside like nothing had happened. Siwa lingered at the doorway, her head tilted in mock pity. "Next time, tell your blind husband to beg with you," she said, chuckling as she shut the door. The lock clicked. For a moment, Lara stood motionless on the doorstep. Her breathing was shallow. She could hear the laughter again inside, low and cruel, muffled behind the closed door. The same house she once called home now felt colder than the wind blowing through her wet clothes. With trembling hands, she turned away. She didn't look back. She walked slowly down the village path, her head bowed, not in submission, but in sorrow. The same eyes that had watched her walk in now followed her retreat. This time, they didn't whisper. They didn't laugh. They just watched, because even gossip knew when something had gone too far. The sun was climbing now, harsh and bright, casting shadows across the dusty road. And Lara, soaked in shame and soup, disappeared into it, barefoot, broken, and silent. When Lara stepped into the hut, the scent of sour soup clung to her like shame. Her dress was soaked, the fabric sticking to her skin, and her feet dragged across the dusty floor. Adisa sat quietly, his legs crossed, his back resting against the mud wall. Though he couldn't see her, something in the air must have shifted, because he turned his head slightly toward her. "You're back," he said softly. Lara opened her mouth, but no words came. Her throat burned from holding back sobs. She stood there for a moment, frozen, until her legs gave way beneath her and she crumpled to the floor. Then she crawled slowly toward him like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Without hesitation, she buried her face in his chest, close, trembling, desperate. He stilled for a second, surprised. It was the first time she had come to him like this. Gently, he wrapped his arms around her, his hands running up and down her back, feeling the damp fabric, the coldness clinging to her skin. "You're wet," he said quietly. "And you smell like oil?" She let out a bitter laugh, half choked by tears. "She poured soup on me." Adisa's arms tightened around her. "I didn't beg for much," Lara whispered, her voice shaking. "Just a little food. But my mother, she looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was filth. And Sewa?" She laughed. She laughed like I deserved it. "You don't," he said firmly. "You don't deserve any of it." "They hate me," she said, her voice cracking. "Maybe they always have. Maybe it's because I remind her of something she's ashamed of. I don't know. But today made it clear." Adisa was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Don't go back there again." Lara pulled back slightly, looking up at him with swollen eyes. "Why?" "Because you're not needed there. Because you're not safe there. Because you're not theirs anymore." "But if not there, then where do I belong?" He turned his blind gaze toward her like he could still see her. "Here, with me." She stared at him, stunned. Not because of the words, but because of how they settled in her chest. She wanted to argue, to say she didn't belong with a man she was forced to marry, a man she didn't choose, a man who couldn't even look into her eyes. But sitting in that broken hut, wrapped in arms that held her like she mattered, she realized she had no one else. Her mother, who was never truly wealthy, had clothed herself in pride, not riches. And when that pride was bruised by Lara's mere existence, she had washed her hands of her completely. "I don't know how we'll survive," Lara said, her voice small. Adisa smiled faintly. "We will. I may not have sight, but I can still feel. And what I feel is that somehow, we'll be okay." Outside, the world whispered, "That's her, the one who married the blind man." Even her own family chased her away. She was never worth much. Lara heard them, every word like a pebble thrown at her back. But inside this hut, inside these arms, for the first time, she didn't feel worthless. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she was finally seen. That evening, the sky wore a strange shade of gray. It wasn't yet night, but the sun had vanished behind a wall of clouds, and the air hung heavy like it was holding its breath. Lara sat by the edge of their tiny mat, watching Adisa, the man who never raised his voice, never panicked, never showed anything beyond calm stillness. And she hated it. "You sit there like nothing is wrong," she snapped, her voice raw. "Like we're not starving, like I'm not being laughed at everywhere I go." Adisa didn't move. "I come home every day with my pride in pieces. I can't even beg in peace without someone calling me the blind man's burden. I'm tired. I'm tired of being hungry, tired of being humiliated. And you just sit there like none of it touches you." His head turned slowly, the only movement he made. "You never talk," she continued, trembling. "You never ask how I feel. You never tell me anything. I don't even know who you are, Adisa. Who are you? What are you hiding from me?" The wind outside had started to moan, pushing against the trees like angry hands. The hut creaked softly, and the air inside shifted, cold, electric. But Adisa remained still, his eyes covered by the same dark glasses he always wore, his face unreadable. "I'm living with a stranger," Lara whispered. "A stranger I was forced to marry. I don't know what you believe, what you dream about, what you fear. You just sit there. always silent, always watching me with eyes that can't see. He finally turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. I watch with what matters. What does that even mean? She snapped. Is it some riddle? Some curse? I asked you once about those men who came to our door. You never answered. You never answer anything. Thunder rumbled across the sky. A sudden gust of wind blew through the cracks in the wall. Then, knock, knock. Lara froze. The knock was sharp, urgent. Her eyes darted to the door. Adisa didn't flinch. Another knock, harder this time. Lara stood slowly, her hands trembling. She reached for the door. The moment she pulled it open, a gust of wind blew in, cold and wet. And there, standing in the doorway, drenched from head to toe, was a beak. Her mother. She looked like a ghost. Her wrapper clung to her legs, her head tie soaked and sliding off. Her face was wild, pale, eyes darting over Lara's shoulder like she'd been running from something. Mama, Lara said, stunned. What are you doing here? Abiki didn't answer immediately. She looked like she had run straight through the storm, barefoot, panicked, desperate. Lara, she whispered, her voice breaking. I had no one else to come to. And behind her, the wind screamed through the trees like it knew something terrible was coming. Lara's breath caught in her throat. Her mother no longer looked like the woman who had mocked her days ago. The fancy fabrics were gone. Her skin was pale, her eyes hollowed with terror, and her hands trembled as if she'd been running from something that still chased her. Rainwater dripped from her wrapper as she stepped into the hut, voice trembling. Lara, you have to help me. But Lara didn't move. She stood frozen, staring at the woman who once poured soup on her face and turned her back when she begged for food. The same woman who watched her walk away in shame, laughing. Help you? Lara whispered, her voice sharp, quiet. Why should I? Tears slid down her mother's cheeks. I was wrong, she said, barely able to say the words. I made a mistake. It was the first time Lara had ever heard those words from her. And yet, it didn't bring comfort. It didn't bring peace, only more confusion, more ache. Adisa, who had remained silent in his corner, finally spoke. His tone was steady, composed, but something beneath it sounded colder. Why are you here? Her mother's gaze flickered to him, and then back to Lara. Because I have nothing left, she whispered. Lara's brow furrowed. What do you mean? With a broken breath, her mother replied, The house is gone. The money is gone. Everything. They came. They took everything. Lara's stomach twisted. She remembered the pride in her mother's voice the day she was forced out, how she paraded her riches like a crown. And now she stood here begging. She wanted to feel vindicated, wanted to laugh like Sewa had laughed at her. But she couldn't. All she felt was tired. Adisa stood then, and the air in the room changed. There was something different in the way he held himself, more grounded, more commanding. His quiet presence suddenly filled every inch of the hut. You didn't come here just because you lost your wealth, he said, his voice too calm. Her mother's lip quivered. They're coming for me, she whispered. Lara's heart jumped. Who? The same people who were looking for him, her mother breathed, pointing at Adisa with a trembling hand. Lara turned sharply. Adisa? She said, her voice full of dread. He didn't answer. His face was unreadable behind those dark glasses, but Lara could feel the weight of something unspoken pressing into the room. Her mother clutched Lara's arm. We have to go. They will kill us if we stay here. Lara yanked her arm away. You left me to starve, remember? You threw food on me like I was garbage. I know, her mother cried. And I was wrong. Please, don't let them find me. Don't let them hurt me. Before Lara could speak, Adisa's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. No one is leaving. His words landed like thunder. The storm howled louder outside. The wind beat against the hut like fists on a coffin. Her mother's eyes widened. You don't understand. These people, they're not normal. They are powerful. Adisa's head tilted slightly. I understand them better than you do. The walls of the hut shook with another gust of wind. Her mother took a step back, then stared at him with dawning horror. You're not just some blind husband, are you? He turned to face her, and even with his glasses on, something in his stance radiated authority. Power. Danger. No, he said simply. Lara's heart skipped. Her mother stared at him like he was a ghost from the past. Then, who are you? Adisa exhaled slowly. I am the man you gave your daughter to, without asking who I really was. The color drained from her mother's face. No, it can't be. That name, that face. You... He took off his glasses. Lara gasped. His eyes were not blind. They were sharp, unforgiving, piercing. You were never blind, she whispered. He looked at her, unblinking. I never said I was. You just assumed. Her mother staggered backward as if the truth itself had pushed her. It's you. It's really you. Adisa put his glasses back on. Yes. Who are you? Lara asked again, her voice shaking. He paused, then answered in a way that made the air seem to still around him. My name is Adisa Umenze, of the Umenze family. Lara's world tilted. That name, she knew it. Everyone did. Her mother whispered almost in reverence, No, not the Umenzes. Lara's mouth went dry. The Umenze name carried weight, power, old money and darker secrets. They weren't just wealthy, they were feared, spoken of in hushed tones, a family so unreachable they felt more myth than reality. You tricked me, Lara said, backing away. You hid everything. Adisa looked at her with quiet honesty. I wanted to see who would stand with me when I had nothing. The wind shrieked through the trees outside, and Lara stood frozen, caught between betrayal and revelation, between her mother's terror and her husband's haunting truth. Lara was a storm buried beneath silence. She didn't speak to Adisa, not because she had nothing to say, but because too much burned inside her. Every time her eyes landed on him, all she saw were the lies, the deception. The man who had let her believe he was helpless, who sat quietly while she begged, starved, and was humiliated. The man who watched her wear the weight of poverty like a second skin, all while hiding a life she never knew he had. She wanted him to speak, to explain, to say something, anything that would make sense of the pain, but he didn't. He sat still, calm as ever, as if nothing had shifted, as if the truth hadn't shattered everything she thought she knew. So Lara withdrew. She cooked. She cleaned. She rose early and made meals in silence, her movements stiff, mechanical. She wouldn't look at him. She wouldn't sit near him. She pulled her foam to the far end of the hut, curling up at night in the corner like a stranger in her own home. Her body was weak, her eyes hollow, and her heart ached with something deeper than hunger. Adisa never forced her to speak. He let her drift away. But sometimes, when she turned suddenly, she'd catch him watching her, his expression unreadable, waiting, like he was giving her time to find her way back. But she didn't want to come back. How could she? She had wept in hunger while he had resources. She had been mocked, drenched in soup, tossed aside by her family, and he had said nothing, all in the name of some test, a test to see if she would stay when he had nothing. But she had stayed. She had given him her dignity, her loyalty, her strength, and he gave her silence. She was tired of being strong. It was early morning when Lara heard the low, powerful rumble of engines outside their hut. It wasn't the sound of Okadas or worn-out buses that sometimes passed through the village. It was deeper, smoother, almost intimidating. She paused, wiping her damp hands on her wrapper. No one ever visited them. let alone people with cars that looked like they belonged in Lagos mansions. Curious, confused, she stepped outside and stopped dead. Parked in front of their humble home were 3 sleek, black luxury SUVs. The paint shimmered beneath the rising sun, spotless, untouched by the village dust. Sharp-dressed men stood near the vehicles, stone-faced, their black suits cutting clean lines against the morning light. They looked like they belonged to another world entirely. And then, from the back seat of the middle SUV, the door opened. Her breath caught. Adisa stepped out, but this wasn't the man she'd been avoiding for days. This wasn't the quiet, barefoot husband who sat on their mat and asked for nothing. He was dressed in a custom black caftan embroidered with rich silver threads. His wristwatch glinted. His posture radiated power. His eyes, no longer hidden behind dark glasses, were piercing, steady, entirely in control. Lara's heart twisted. She should have looked away, turned her back on him in anger, but she couldn't. The man before her didn't just look different. He was different. Then the last door opened. A tall, imposing elderly man stepped out, flanked by 2 silent men in matching suits. He wore a flowing navy blue agbada with gold embroidery. His bald head gleamed. His trimmed white beard framed a face that looked like it had never known softness. He glanced around the compound with thinly veiled contempt before his eyes landed on Adisa. "So, this is the life you chose," the man said, voice like steel. "Living in the dirt, hiding from your name." Adisa gave a quiet nod. "Father." Lara's chest tightened. His father. The older man's jaw clenched. "You're the only son of the Umenzi family. Everything I built, everything that belongs to us, is yours. And this is how you repay it?" He gestured around with disgust, his gaze finally settling on Lara. "And this," he added, "is the woman you married?" Lara's fists curled at her sides. She didn't flinch under his stare, but his words pierced her like cold steel. She suddenly felt very small, very out of place. Adisa stepped forward, positioning himself between her and his father. His voice was calm, but resolute. "I didn't walk away from wealth, Father. I walked away to find truth, to find someone who sees me, not just the name I carry." The elder Umenza scoffed. "And did you?" Adisa looked at Lara. Their eyes met for the first time in days. She couldn't breathe. There was something unspoken in his eyes, a question, a plea, maybe even regret. But she couldn't give him what he wanted. Not yet. Not after everything. She looked away. Adisa's shoulders dropped slightly. Then he turned back to his father. "Yes," he said simply. The older man's face twisted. "Enough of this foolishness. Come home, take your rightful place." A heavy silence hung in the air. Then Adisa said, "No." His father's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake." Adisa shook his head. "Number for once, I'm making a decision." Without another word, his father turned, climbed back into the SUV, and slammed the door shut. The other men followed. Engines ignited, tires kicked up dust, and just like that, they were gone. But their presence lingered. Adisa stood still, alone again, though this time everything about him screamed of power, not poverty. And Lara, she stood frozen, heart pounding. She had lived with this man, suffered beside him, cried over cold pots. And yet, she never really knew him. Now that she did, she didn't know how to feel. The sun had barely risen, but Lara was already on her knees, scrubbing the floor like her life depended on it. The small hut was quiet except for the harsh drag of the rag against the ground and the soft clinking of the metal bowl beside her. Her hands moved fast, almost angrily, as if scrubbing could wipe away the days she'd spent in silence. Days filled with questions, bitterness, and the ache of disappointment. Adisa stood by the doorway watching her. She didn't look up. She hadn't really looked at him since the truth came out. Every time he tried to approach, She found something else to do, another corner to clean, another chore to bury herself in. But today, he stepped closer. "Lara," he said quietly. She didn't answer, just wrung the rag, water dripping down her arm. He knelt beside her slowly. "I know you're hurting, and you have every right to." She paused for a split second, then went back to scrubbing. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. "I did it because I needed to know if I could be loved without the weight of the Umenzi name." Her hands froze. He took a breath. "Everything I did for a reason." Lara laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Then she dropped the rag and looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in days. Her eyes were red-rimmed, filled with unshed tears. Her chest rose and fell, trying to hold back everything she had swallowed. "For a reason," she whispered. "Is that what you tell yourself to sleep better?" He opened his mouth, but she cut him off, her voice trembling now. "Did it ever cross your mind how I felt? Did you think, even once, about what it cost me to stay? To be mocked? To go to bed hungry? To be called a beggar's wife?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You watched me suffer, Adisa. You sat there, letting me believe we were both helpless. You let me carry it all while you waited to see if I was worthy of you." His face crumbled, guilt etched into every line. "I didn't see it like that," he said, his voice low. I thought I was protecting something real." She shook her head slowly. "You were protecting yourself. I was the one bleeding for it." Her shoulders trembled. She tried to wipe her face, but more tears came, uncontrollable now. And still, she didn't look away. Adisa reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing her arm. She didn't pull back, not immediately. "I don't know where to begin," he said, brokenly. "I don't know how to fix this." Lara sat still, her hands limp in her lap, her face wet with emotion. "I don't need you to fix anything," she said softly. "I just needed the truth. I needed to know I mattered." He took her hands gently in his, holding them like they were made of glass. "You do," he whispered. "You always did." But Lara didn't reply. She just let herself cry. For the pain, for the silence, for everything she'd endured. And Adisa, for once, didn't try to stop her. He just stayed there, kneeling beside her, finally silent for the right reason. Will Lara's tears wash away the walls between them, or is the damage already too deep? Should she walk away from the man who shattered her trust, or take the risk of loving him again? Double tap if your heart isn't ready for what happens next. Comment Part 3 if you want the next twist, because this story is only just beginning. And don't forget to share and follow for more.